but it was Levine's guitar that really stood out. Somewhere in Dublin, a guitarist who'd taken to call himself The Edge evidently noted its ringing, echoing tone and adapted it himself for
Yes.
YouTube.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. It's Andy, it's John, and it's time for music. John, you're going to be offering up something for me to go off and listen to that we're going to discuss thereafter. But what do you have in store for us today, my friend?
Wow. This has been discussed in the comment section of a couple of episodes from some of our regulars, so I thought it was about time, and it's for your own good. Um, I don't know if you'll like this or not. I really have no idea. Um, but I think whether you do enjoy it or not, I think it's good for you to hear this. This is a seminal piece of work, and yeah, enough said. So
Okay.
the band is Public Image Limited.
Okay.
That's Mr. Lydon's outfit, and
Oh, okay. Mr. Lydon. He's just always Johnny Rotten to me, but okay. Got you.
Johnny Rotten was very much killed off.
Okay.
um, in his mind anyway. Maybe not in the tabloid press, but yeah. So this is their sort of titular song, "Public Image."
Okay. Oh, okay. The band is Public Image Limited. The song is
Yes,
Public Image. Okay. All
yes,
right. Well, yeah. Let me go off and give this a listen. And I really only have what few songs by the Sex Pistols I know to kind of hold this up against, which is
yeah,
probably, I don't know if that's the move to do anyway, because it sounds like the next thing after, right? This is after this. Okay.
yes.
Um. All right. Well, equipped with a little information I have, I will go off, give this a listen, and I will come back and let you and everybody out there know what I think. Yeah. Your boy Johnny Rotten looking more like less punk and more post punky and new wavy. Um, Even the sound is brighter. It's got a brighter quality than the punk that I'm used to from whenever Johnny Rotten is delivering the lyrics and the vocals, right? So that's interesting. I love. I mean, I spoke about it a moment ago. The brightness. The brightness of the guitar is beautiful so far. Love the way it started on the bass and then kind of grew from there. So many great tunes do that. But yeah, let's see where this goes. Yeah, that guitar is beautiful. He said something about I will not be treated as property. I think. God bless him. not always the easiest for these Yank ears to discern when I'm listening to Johnny Rotten sing, but that's just part of his charm and fervent nature of and his delivery oftentimes. But yeah, public image won't be treated as property. This sounds like he's taking the piss out of somebody. Record label, fans, former band. I don't know. But given the energy he has when he's delivering this and some of the very scant lyrics that I'm catching, um, it sounds like he's got comments pointed at someone or somebody. That's for sure. Nice rolling bass there. That guitar tone is so good. Hmm. I assume that's it. There's a few seconds left, but that very much sounded like the end of the song. Um, yeah, this wasn't. This song, I don't think, was about exhibiting like technical savvy, but it was about energy and attitude, and that is oftentimes the backbone of rock and roll. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I enjoyed it very much. There's countless songs that I gravitate toward that have that same kind of energy and construct, right? Where they're not trying to like reinvent the wheel or create some new sound in rock and roll. It is a new sound for Johnny Rotten, at least for me in my experience listening to him. Um, but yeah, it was very enjoyable. I think a big part of this song, outside of the really great, like the rhythm section was great in the song. Those bright guitar tones were really magnetic. I loved those every time, especially after he would sing, they would sort of shine for a bit there, and I really loved those portions. To take nothing away from his vocal delivery, I mean, that's part of the song as well, obviously. Um, but yeah, it was just it was a lot of fun listening to those bits musically. But for me, I think the bigger picture probably is within the message that he was delivering, which I only caught a bit of. He said something about his hatred, which, you know, that's a jarring term, right? You hear hatred, you're like, ooh, someone's in trouble. Sort of this taking ownership of himself, it sounded like. So yeah, these lyrics are pointed at somebody. I'd love to get all of them and better understand who they were aimed at. Sure, John will help me with that, as well as like the timeline of when this was and kind of the backstory. I'm not sure who he's pissed at, but there's definitely some attitude, and I think he does a great job in capturing that in his sort of performance, if you will. I mean, there's a lot of attitude wrapped up in that as well. So yeah, let's get back to John and have him spackle in these gaps to help me better understand this otherwise really fun tune, and even more fun performance, dare I say. So all right, let's get back to him.
So you have returned.
I have.
Um, Before I ask you what you think, I will say this. This is a slice of musical history. And when we go into the details, I can promise you an interesting tale or two, if nothing else. But
That's
let me
that's
let's hear what you think about it.
no, it's perfect. That's man. After it's just such a short little song, but there's a
Yeah, yeah.
lot in here that you can. And again, I'll say this: I don't. This doesn't happen all the time. But like your man's got a certain delivery about him that like not all of his lyrics are very clear for me, but what I heard sounded so pointed and evocative that I'm
Yeah.
like, even if I don't, even if this isn't a top five end of the year song for me, which spoiler alert, it's not. Like, I liked it. It's a good song. It's just not great. It didn't bowl me over. It's not something I'm going to like actively seek the minute we end this call. But the whole like musical history and what it means in a larger picture kind of thing, I was able to at least understood that that existed there. I don't understand it wholly, which is like has kind of like it's weird because the scales of uh, interpretation of this, like my love for it is weighted a little like higher, but the sinking is the intrigue. Like all the weight is on the one side of the intrigue that I have after hearing. I am interested in the narrative behind this and what caused this. Musically it was good, but oh, there's something more to this. There's a story and I want it because I love rock and roll and I love history. So there, that's enough. You've got me hooked there. But yeah, it starts off with this little bit of bass from like Christ, man. Could you be any more laid back at it? Like look at the rest. First of all, look at your lead vocalist, and you're gonna be sat there in all black with some Lennon shades, legs crossed on a stool or a chair, just plucking away. Like, dude, come on. People
Wait till
paid
you
to
hear
see you. Get up.
wait till you hear what his name is.
Oh,
Then it'll,
Jesus Christ.
right, anyway, we'll get into
I
that.
can't. So but the bass that he's playing is pleasant and it's nice and it gets the song started off. And then you get the first chuckle out of me because you get like this plenty of slightly distant sounding salutations coming from your man. Like hello, hi, hello, and then we're off to the races. And we get these really musically for me, what was my favorite part of this song were these really bright chords, like the tonality of the guitar was my favorite thing musically in the whole
Yes.
song. It was so I don't know, it was like crisp and clean and just I don't know, it's like the musical version of the waters of Lake Minnetonka. Like it's just like you could just feel yourself being baptized in the brightness of those guitar chords, and I really really enjoyed those. But yeah, your boy Johnny Rotten is delivering the lyrics in this really, for me, engaging. I bet for some people it's like, all right, quit with the pomp and circumstance and all this stuff. But for
Yeah.
me, I find that to be like, I mean, I grew up watching David, it's not making sense. So my idea of what frontman antics are supposed to be are different than others, I suppose. But I liked his energy on this a lot, and it made me engage more with the performance. And there's something manic about his stage presence, which only further adds to the enjoyment of witnessing the live performance. Also, something that I thought was interesting was just like take the antics out of it, just his visage alone. Like he looks a far less punk rock in his appearance than he does like this sort of post punk new wavy kind of look with the top coat,
Yes.
like the jacket and the odd pants, and it looked very late 70s, early 80s ish kind of look to him. So I thought that was kind of an interesting change of pace from what I'm normally used to seeing when I'm looking at old pictures of the Sex Pistols and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like scabs and blood and spit and all that. And this is more, I don't know, a little more cleaned up version of it, even though it's still a beatnik in its own way. Um, I will say that for all the stage presence he brings to the performance in the song, I am struggling to catch a lot of the lyrics. The one thing I did a lot bits I caught were public image. He talks about how like I don't remember the exact words, but something to the effect of wanting to take ownership of himself, or like he was his own commodity, not somebody else's. Was essentially the essence of what he was saying. That's interesting. He also claimed like ownership of his hatred. Like that my hatred is blah blah blah. And it's like, oh shit, you hear hatred, that's like a red flag kind of phrase. Like, what's he talking about? Who's this pointed at? So yeah, there were I think I caught a couple other pieces too, but I can't recall. But there were all these lyrics that were very evocative, and you knew that he was pointing them at somebody, and you wanted to know who they were aimed at. And I like thought, okay, it's either the record label, the former band or members of, or maybe even the fan base, because you can never tell with Johnny Rotten who how his anger is going to bubble up and manifest. So I thought that was intriguing, and that's when things really started to. When I started like, okay, I got questions. Even if I don't love the song, there's so much shit I want to know from John about this. So yeah, learning more about the lyrics from you and the meaning of the song is going to be a lot for me in this one. And the songs seems to be less about the technical savvy or the intricacies of the music and more about the energy and the attitude, which is perfectly fine. I mean, this is just an observation of mine, not something that I'm saying is to the detriment of the song. In fact, that's one of the major tenets of the genre of rock and roll is attitude and edge, and this had that in spades. So I thought that was, and to be able to see it live made it all that much more like enjoyable because you got to see and really
Yeah.
feel the energy. It was palpable. And I will say he delivers the lines towards the end, my grand finale, my goodbye. And just after he says that, and I think this happens earlier in the song too, but I really hooked onto it here. The brightness of the guitar right after he says that is really when like it's always bright, but it shines like it's got a shimmer to it at this point in the tune, and I love that. It's a fine melody, but it's the tone. It's not what's being played; it's the sound that it's played, and that sound that the guitar makes is absolutely lovely. Um, then, as the song wraps up, we get your man delivering the line "public image," and then a very punctuated goodbye that ominously and abruptly shifts to this serious, almost spoken word delivery and the slight echo to it, and we're done. And then, of course, the weird close up of the eyes turned like like the 1% of the transition from man to werewolf phase. Like the eyes are always the first thing to turn like a green or a yellow, and then the rest of the shit starts morphing. That was like kind of where it took me there. And I couldn't help but think, I don't know why this thought came to mind, but like if this is how Bilbo Baggins bid farewell at his 111th birthday, it would have been way cooler than what we got in the Fellowship of the Ring if he was just like goodbye and his eyes turned green and he just disappeared. I'd be like, yeah, Bilbo, that's fucking badass. But that's for some reason that was this up on stage and bidding a weird ominous farewell. That's the first thing it took me to for some reason. I don't know. I'm a nerd, but I loved that. It made me laugh. But yeah, this is clearly Johnny Rotten getting something off his chest, and or Jonathan Lydon or whatever I'm supposed to call this iteration of him. But yeah, and I'd love to know what that's about and who it's aimed at.
Okay, cool. I will try and check myself here because I could talk for hours about this. But full disclosure, to my first love of music, apart from the chart stuff and that when I was a kid, was probably blues, Delta blues. And then my second love was punk. And I was actually the one and only time I was in a band when I was a teenager, with some other kids at school. And the only thing cool about us was the name. We picked the name, which is a brilliant name for a punk band, The Remedials. And that was the best thing about our band. All we did was Pistols covers, and we were fucking dreadful. And I played
Oh,
bass
good.
and had spiky hair like Sid Vicious, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And if I'd maybe given another 20 years, I could have worked out a chord. But I only played one gig with them, which ended in disaster. And but I love all that shit, and so I was a devotee of Pistols from a young age. So this is really interesting, and I'll try and do it as a narrative of what's going on, so you get an idea. But there's some funny stories along the way and some weird stuff. So Pistols, after their January tour in '78, broke up. Ha ha ha! Have you got the feeling you've been cheated and all that? So Lydon then travelled with a photographer called Dennis Morris and the Virgin Records boss, Richard Branson, to Jamaica, where Branson was actually scouting out emerging new reggae talents. What he also did at the time, though, Branson arranged and flew um, the American new wave band Devo to Jamaica. He was aiming to install Lydon as their lead vocalist. Devo declined the offer.
Can't
That's
imagine
just
why.
bizarre, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think he even told Lydon about this until he's trying to put it out. I'm just putting this on the table, guys. No. So he returned to England and he decided about setting up a new band, and he wanted to call it almost anti-music. You know, he had all this. We know from a previous, we're talking about the Slits and Ariap, etc., that he was her stepfather, and
Hmm.
there's this public persona of John Lydon, Johnny Rotten, and then there's what he actually does in real life, which is very, very different. Um, but he has this legend about him. He's described him as like a punk version of Richard III, the way he staggered around with his shirts and all this sort of stuff. So he approaches a childhood friend they went to school with, called John Wardle, who is now known as Jar Wobble. And they decided to form a band. Yeah, they've been in the same school in Hackney, known each other for years, and they belonged for a circle of friends, which Lydon called the Gang of Johns, and that was John Lydon, John Wardle, a chap called John Gray, who I don't know who it is. I feel like I should, but I don't. And another one called Simon John Ritchie, or Beverly, aka Sid Vicious. So that was the Gang of Johns. Um, Lydon assumed with Jar Wobble, as he had done with Sid Vicious, that Wobble would just learn to play the bass guitar as he went along. Unlike Sid, Wobble actually proved to have complete natural talent and was great at it. So I think he'd only been playing the bass a year, maybe less, when he heard this song.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, yeah.
not
So
too shabs.
he approached a chap called Keith Levine for the band as well. Now, Levine and Lydon knew each other from touring in 1976 when Levine was still a member of The Clash.
Mm.
And then the fourth member of the band, Jim Walker, was a Canadian student new to the country, and he answered an advert in the Melody Maker for a drummer, and he got the job. So they started rehearsing in '78, and he then proclaimed the band, named them Public Image, and the Limited was added later when the band was incorporated as a company in July '78. And he said to journalists, "We're not a band, we're a company." Um, and it's named after the Mural Spock novel, The Public Image from 1968. So they debuted then just a few months later with this song in October '78. So it's their first outing, first single.
There's something ironic about the idea of taking on this company like
Yeah, yeah.
persona when you're punk and you're supposed to be like anti big business and capitalism and all that, money grubbing shit. And it's like, no, we're not a band, we're a business. And it's like,
Well,
that's
it's
not
kind of
punk.
not. It's almost not as you would see a business, but this is definitely not punk. This is one of the first post
Yeah.
punk bands. Um, but is this attitude about ownership and all this stuff and what Malcolm McLaren did to them and shit like that. So anyway, yeah, so he wrote it when he was still a member of the Pistols, and it's about his feelings of being exploited by Malcolm McLaren and about the rest of the band not really appreciating or understanding him. And they're asking, like, oh, what color will your hair be this week and shit like that. Single got to number 9 in the UK charts, which is pretty good. Now, just a little detour here. For me, the formation of British post-punk sound came from two guitarists, one of which we've already covered, John McGeoch, who was in Magazine, and then Susie and the Banshees. We both talked about him at length and his fantastic guitar sound. And the second is Keith Levine, who you heard here, and his wondrous work on the first 3.5 Pill albums. I say half for a reason, which you'll discover. So he wasn't your typical punk or post-punk guitarist. At 15 years old, due to his love of prog rock, he worked as a roadie for Yes.
Oh.
Um, he's also a fan of ska and also the Beatles, big time. Um, and he had very unpunk attitudes. So 1976, Keith Levine was involved in forming two bands. One was the legendary The Flowers of Romance, which has got so many people. Got Sid Vicious was in it, and other people as well. They never actually did any music, put anything out. I don't. They probably might have performed, but they didn't record anything. But it's kind of a legendary that although these people were in this band and they were in a squad, but then they went off to do other stuff. But then he also, along with his mate Mick Jones, he formed the Clash, and he got Joe Strummer to join the band. And partly because of that was he demonstrated as Strummer how well he could play Led Zeppelin songs. And then when they got Strummer in and they were playing live and at rehearsals, Keith Levine would actually go and turn down his guitar because he didn't believe him to be a sufficiently competent musician at that point. And he didn't really fit in with the Clash and the way they were going. So, he left, soon after that. But he's one of these ones. He always said you have to do the work if you want to be good at guitar, which is very much against the sort of the punk ethos that anyone can do
Yeah.
it, sort of thing. Right, so we'll get into the song really quickly. So it starts off again with this sort of there is a touch of the theatrics, and I understand my hypocrisy here, but I sort of, enjoyed Mr. Lennon and as Johnny Rotten his antics for years, so I get that. So hello, 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 ha 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 ha. You never listened to a word that I said. You only see me for the clothes that I wear. Or did the interest go so much deeper? It must have been the color of my hair. The public image. What you wanted was never made clear. Behind the image was ignorance and fear. You hide behind his public machine, still follow the same old scheme. The public image. Two sides to every story. Somebody had to stop me. I'm not the same as when I began. I will not be treated as property. Public image. Two sides to every story. Someone has to stop me. I'm not the same as when I began. It's not a game of Monopoly. Public image. Public image, you got what you wanted. The public image belongs to me. It's my entrance, my own creation, my grand finale, my goodbye. Public image, goodbye. Um, there's a really, I'll just read you a snippet from a very long article that was in The Guardian by Alexis Padridis, done in November 2022. The great irony of Public Image Limited, the band that, along with Manchester's Magazine, sparked the post-punk movement and its wholesale rejection of rock music's traditions, is that they opened their account with a rock anthem. One of the greatest debut singers of all time. Everything about Public Image is fantastic. Wobble's deep dub reggae influenced bass, Lydon's furious lyrical excoriation of punk and the perceptions of him it had engendered, the petulant dead halt it comes to as Lydon dismissively spits the word goodbye. But it was Levine's guitar that really stood out. Somewhere in Dublin, a guitarist who'd taken to call himself The Edge evidently noted its ringing, echoing tone and adapted it himself.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
A song that was supposed to signify the end to rock traditionalism inspired with the 80s stadium rock key sounds. Peel's debut album, first issue, was filled with examples of Levine's hugely inventive and original approach to the instrument. The woozy chords that opened theme are one of the few precursors for the hugely influential sound minted by My Bloody Valentine's Kevin Shields a decade later. Over the course of the song's 9 minutes, the sheer array of noises Levine rings from his guitar is astonishing, particularly given that the whole thing was played live in the studio without any overdubs. It is a great album and it's amazing. There's a leap forward in terms of what they output in '78. The mainstream was still catching up to punk then, so you had this cod punk coming out from other bands, and other people had already moved on, such as Magazine and Pill, and gone on to the next iteration, which again people caught up with in maybe 2 years' time for a lot of them. They developed it even further with the next album called Metal Box, and yeah, as they say, more on that later. Wobble left before the third album, which was 1981's The Flowers of Romance, and Levine then quit during the making of the fourth album. Now, Lydon then recorded the whole thing with session musicians after Lavina left, and he put it out as 1983. He said, "This is what you want. This is what you get." And bizarrely, Levine, I believe he actually might have stolen some of the master tapes when he left, but he then cut it and put out his own version of the same album the following year, calling it Commercial Zone. Very odd. So
Yeah,
anyway, the story continues. Lydon continued as Pill, which was essentially a solo project with a rotating cast of support musicians. Some stayed more longer than others, including John McGeoch, actually, for 6 years was in and out of Pill. Um, 29 members in total in the band up to this point.
Jesus.
Um, they achieved chart success in '86 with the album and the single Rise in particular. And Lydon continued to sort of build his brand, reform the Pistols every 5 years or so, make lots of filthy lucre, write autobiographies, look after his family, and advertise butter very notoriously. Um, Levine actually relocated to the US, where he worked with the Red Hot Chili Peppers for quite a while, including producing their music. And there are reams of heroin-filled anecdotes.
I
And then in
imagine.
1989, some of the band were his backing band on his debut solo album, Violent Opposition. Um, so he's kind of stumbled along, and then in 2010 he reconnected with Jar Wobble, and then they continued to perform and release new material over the next decade or so. Um, Levine actually died from complications of liver cancer at his home in Norfolk in November 2022. Hence, that article was
Mm,
written regarding then, just after he died. He was aged 65.
yeah. Damn.
So yeah, Pill actually, like a little footnote here, last year they competed in Eurosong 2023 with a song dedicated to Lydon's wife, Nora Foster, as one of six bands attempting to win the competition to represent Ireland at the Eurovision Song Contest. They finished fourth. Um, after her death in April, Hill then announced and released their latest album, which they brought out just after that in sort of summer 23, and then announced a European tour supporting the new album. So they're still going, they're still churning
Yeah.
out stuff every now and then. And obviously, I think he's got something else to focus his energy into because he'd been with a very since I think it was 77, 78, something like that. So he'd been with her a very long time, you know. So yeah. Interesting. There's a lot more to say about Public Image Limited, and we'll probably dig out. No, I will. I'll dig out something else for you to listen to that's a
Nice.
bit more experimental. And this is a quite a clean sort of entrance into their
Yeah, it's
world.
probably a good introduction to them, I would
Yeah,
think.
yeah. So yeah, there's a lot more to the Pill story, but we'll
Yeah.
continue it in the next iteration.
Excellent.
Cool. All right, I'll wrap things up. Thanks for listening to this, Andy.
Thank
Folks out
you.
there, I knew you'd probably get a kick out the sort of how it fits in with everything, if nothing else, you know,
Yeah, no, if
because it's
the
quite cool.
lesson and the sort of filling in the gaps on stuff and the
Yeah,
insight into the feelings and all that going on at the time is really intriguing and cool. So I'm glad better for it.
I could. I mean, in terms of what happened when he left, and then the Pistols, and that again, that's a whole history lesson there, and Malcolm McLaren rewriting history and that god awful great rock and roll swindle. Anyway, don't get me started. So folks out there, tell us what you think of this song, Keith Levine's fantastic guitar tone. Um, John Lydon and his various characters and caricatures. Um, yeah, this anything else? I know there's some people who've already commented on how much they're a fan of Metal Box, etc. This is still a really, really, really good album as well. And in terms of leaps forward into musically, it's one of the big stepping stones in Britain anyway. So yeah, love to hear your comments. Tell us what you think. If you haven't already subscribed,
Come on.
you know what to do. Well, clearly you don't because you haven't. You should subscribe is what you should do.
There you go.
We really, we really appreciate everybody who does to support this channel. Yeah, so as Len Fairclough would say, thumbs up. That's an in-house joke that's in very bad taste. And that being said, thanks again so much for watching. and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.